Hi, everyone. My name is Carly Smith, and I'm the Director of Career Education at the Topple Career Center. And thank you so much for being here today for our Career Success Strategies for Healthcare and Life Science Industry Search presentation. I wanted to start off today's presentation by just saying that I recognize that right now is definitely a trying time for us all, and I hope that all of you and your families and friends are healthy and safe right now. And I want you all to know that the Topple Career Center is here for you as a support in whatever needs that you have as the semester concludes and into the summer and on from there. So let us know whatever it is that you need any assistance with, and we're here for you. Before we jump into the presentation today, I actually wanted to share a quote to start us off, because I like to think about quotes during different difficult times to help lead me and give me some inspiration. And the quote is, "Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it." So I'm sure many of you have heard that quote before, but I think it's a really good one that summarizes some of the things that we're going to be talking about today, because there's a lot of things that are outside of our control right now. For example, the economy is out of our control, and different job opportunities, a lot of those things, employers, what they're doing right now. But there is actually a lot that we can control as it relates to our job search. And there are a lot of things that you can be doing right now to continue to reach your career goals, even if you are facing some setbacks or changes than what you had originally planned. And so today we'll talk a little bit more about some of those strategies that you can engage in. So we can move to the agenda for today. All right, so here's what we're going to be covering in today's session. First of all, we're going to be talking about some resume and interview tips, resume tips specific to healthcare and the life sciences, and then also some interview tools that might be really helpful to you in the world of virtual or phone interviewing that you might be seeing more often now. We'll talk about some of the online tools that are available to you, including Cane to Cane and LinkedIn, that can really help you with networking during this time. We're going to be talking about Handshake, which some of you may already be familiar with. It's where the event was posted for this session, but it's a great resource, and there's a lot of ways you can use it. We'll talk about staying motivated, and then also I'm going to be giving some specific tips to healthcare and life science students about some things that are available to you in particular to help you out during this time. So our goal throughout today's presentation is to give you knowledge and empower you to use all of the resources that are available to you. And please feel free to, if you have any questions, ask them in the chat feature, and myself and some other Topple staff are monitoring those questions, and if I see them, I will make sure to try to cover those throughout the session. Okay, let's move along. Okay, so I want to get started with your resume, because the resume is such a critical professional document that represents you. And right now, your resume is going to be even more important, I would say, because when we lose some of those in-person opportunities where you maybe meet someone first and then show them your resume, right now in this time, sometimes your resume may be the first thing that someone sees about you before they actually meet you. And so this is a great time to make sure that your resume is updated. We actually recommend that resumes are updated every 6 months, especially because within a 6-month time frame, you're taking new classes, you may have been engaged in new involvements or leadership activities, perhaps learned a new skill, and it's always good to keep those fresh when you can. We also recommend that you upload those documents onto Handshake, and we will give you a critique of them. and we get through those critiques within 3 to 5 business days. Someone asked a really great question that I want to actually address right away, which is, what is the difference between a resume and a CV, and which one should you have? So resumes and CVs are actually pretty similar to each other. A resume is meant for more industry related jobs, and a CV is meant for more academic related opportunities. So when you think of times that you would use a CV, that would be typically for if you're applying to graduate school opportunities, if you're applying to scholarships, if you're applying to research related roles. So think about things that are more academic in nature is a good time to consider using a CV. And the other major difference between a resume and a CV is that a resume is typically a snapshot of your most relevant experiences. So most resumes are only 1 or 2 pages in length, and a CV is meant to be your full academic history related to what you're applying to. So I always like to use the example of President Frank. President Frank probably has a CV that's like 100 pages long because of all of the many things he's been involved in. So I'm sure that no one's quite there yet, but one day maybe you can have a CV like him. Another thing available to you for the resume is Topple's Resume Guide, which you can find on our website on hurricane.com, which has some tips for you, and there's also some sample resumes there too. So also when it comes to your resume, here are just a few tips I wanted to highlight to consider as you're updating your resume or CV during this time. Number 1, is your font consistent and design easy to read? That's usually the first thing that people notice when your resume or CV is in front of them is, does this look nice? You know, before they actually start reading what's on there, it's about what it looks like. And so this is something that our advisors can really help with. Sometimes you've looked at a document so many times, you may not realize that a font in one area is completely different than the font somewhere else, or you may think that everything is spelled correctly, but then you use the wrong version of there. Sometimes you look at it so much, your eyes will gloss over those little details, and that's why it's great to have a Topple advisor look over it, because we're kind of trained to look for all of those little things. Also, does your resume include important keywords? Keywords are really crucial for a resume because some of you may know about applicant tracking systems, which are basically systems that many companies use that they use computers to scan your documents for keywords that match a particular job opportunity, so that the best resumes based upon those keywords get in front of the people who make the decisions. And so not all companies use them, but it's even good to use appropriate keywords whether or not a company uses them or not, because if I am looking for a candidate for an upcoming opportunity and I know based upon the job description I created that I need someone who is a leader and that knows Microsoft Excel and that has some experience with the Spanish language, then when I'm scanning through resumes, I'm going to look for words that reflect that. Like, I'm going to be looking for the word Spanish. I'm going to be looking for the word leader somewhere on the resume, whether I'm doing it consciously or not. So with that in mind, we recommend that you go through the job descriptions that you're going to be applying to. Look for keywords that you're seeing and make sure that those keywords are being put onto your documents. And that may mean you have to make little tweaks every time you apply to a new job, but it really does help catch the eye of the reader. We also have a resource available to recommend here called JobScan. And JobScan is a free resource where you can actually just copy and paste your resume and copy and paste the job description, and it auto will tell you how aligned the two are. So that's a really good free resource that you can use for that. Another thing that you should be asking yourself are the bullet statements that you're using impactful? And do they include what you did, the skills you used, and any results? I review a lot of resumes, and this is one area where I feel that students can do a lot more in selling themselves. So what I've often heard from students is people will write very brief statements and they'll say, well, shouldn't I be extremely concise? They don't want to read all this detail. And yes, while you do want to be concise on your resume, you also want to paint a very clear picture to the reader about what you did, the projects, the skills that you used, and also any results that were achieved. Because when you're being chosen for different opportunities, people want to know if any of the things that you did led to any amazing results, whether something ended up getting published, or whether or not what you did led to some improvement at the organization, or a change in how something was done, or increased customer service or satisfaction from the clients. Whatever that result is, it's really great to highlight it. And I'm going to show some sample bullet points on the next slide in a moment where you can see that being done. And then the last point is, are internships and part-time jobs being featured in the experience section? In your experience sections on your resume, you can include any paid or unpaid opportunities, whether they're internships, part-time jobs, volunteer service opportunities, research roles. Anything where you got to showcase your skills and develop skills would be appropriate to have in an experience section. So if we move on to the next slide, I'm going to talk about some healthcare and life science resume tips in particular. So when I meet with students in these majors, these are the 4 things that I recommend most that they should probably appear on your resume depending on the context you're in. So the first thing is clinical experience. So this can mean something different depending on your major. If you're a nursing student, for example, well then of course as part of your academic experience, you have clinicals. And I always tell all the nursing students that I meet with, you need to have your clinical experiences on your resume. Employers want to know which hospitals you are working in and which areas you got experience in, so definitely put that. But clinical experience can also mean patient care experience that you had. If perhaps you are a pre-health student, maybe pre-med or pre-PA, and you did experiences like working as a medical assistant or an EMT or medical mission trips, anything where you had some of that inside maybe patient care or in a clinical setting experiences, it could count in that section too. And that's a great way to showcase your knowledge of the field. And also if you've done any relevant experience in the field. Another really important section, if you have it, is a research experience section. And you can see the example on the resume that we posted in here. And so this obviously is very important if you're going into research roles, but this section can also be really helpful if you are applying to graduate programs where research is a component, because graduate programs will want to know your level of ability that you have in research. In particular, if you're thinking about PhD programs or medical school, a good research experience can be very helpful. And as you can see in this sample, the bullet points describe many different aspects of the research. So from the actual concrete steps that the student took in the lab to the creation of research reports. And so they're showing a variety of skill sets gained through the research. If you're applying to a pre-health professional school, shadowing is really important to have on your resume or CV. That's something that the graduate programs will want to be aware of. And People sometimes will leave those off because they'll say, oh, well, you know, I didn't do anything. But it's good to at least write a line about what you observed. Maybe you observed some interesting surgeries. Maybe you got to oversee consults with patients. So there are some things that you can highlight on the resume about that too. And then lastly, any relevant skills, certifications, or trainings. This, of course, will be different depending on what your major is, but some common examples I see are things like CPR or basic life support. If you're a nursing student, sometimes you go through specific training programs that are unique to UM students that maybe other students in other universities haven't gone through. Sometimes I see things like patient management databases. Sometimes if you're more involved in research, I'll see things like SPSS or some unique research skills. And then of course there's the typical ones like languages or computer programs, but think about some of the ones that might be specific to your major and field that you can add. Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide, which is talking about the value of your virtual network. So during this time, it is extremely important to not only build your network, but to strengthen your existing network. And sometimes people think, well, how can I do that when I can't actually meet people face to face? But I don't know about you, but during the last month, I have probably spoken to my friends, you know, from high school, college, my family, relatives, more than I have in my entire life. And so this really is a good time to build and strengthen that network because everyone's really trying to connect with others during this time. The line here about most career opportunities come from your network is a really important thing to keep in mind, and it's true. They've done research on this. And most people who have obtained successful job opportunities, when they're asked, how did you hear of this opportunity? Most people say, I heard about it or I received it because of someone in my network. And those people in their network aren't always, and actually usually aren't always the close people. Like it's not usually your best friend that gets you the job, but maybe it's like your uncle's neighbor from down the street. It's usually those loose ties that are the ones that provide you the opportunities, but it's because of your close network that more people know about what your goals and needs are and can help spread the word for you. So when it comes to networking, I think one of the important things to keep in mind is that networking might not get you a job immediately. Like you may not have a conversation with someone and then all of a sudden that leads you to a job opportunity, but it could lead to a variety of unique opportunities throughout your career. So someone that you were friends with in high school, for example, you know, maybe in a few years down the road, you go to different colleges, but then they start their career in an industry or at a company that becomes interesting to you later, and when you're job searching, you see that they're there and you can connect with them about their experience and maybe it will lead to something. And so that's why it's really important to just continuously keep track of your network and maintain it, because you don't always know where people are going and the amazing opportunities that they're achieving. And so if you maintain the relationships over time, then things could happen that are really interesting in the future. And networking also shouldn't be used as a means to an end anyway, because you can gain a lot of value in networking by learning information from the people that you're talking to, and that can help you learn about yourself by giving you new insight and direction. So by talking to someone in a career that you're interested in, that might help change the direction of your own path and some of the things that you are going to do next. So with that being said, I want to highlight two networking tools you have available to you. And those are Cane to Cane and LinkedIn. LinkedIn you probably all have heard of. Cane to Cane may be new to some of you. So Cane to Cane was just launched for UM students in September of this year, or sorry, of 2019. And it is a community that is coordinated through TOPL, and its mission is to connect students and alumni for opportunities to explore careers and prepare for the workplace and establish connections. So alumni and also friends of the university and also faculty and staff opt into Cane to Cane to be a mentor. And a mentor just means that they want to help provide their knowledge and advice to students and other alums. And so you can search for these mentors by the industry that they're in, the major they had when they were in college, but you can also search them by other commonalities you share, like your gender, or maybe you are an international student and you can search for other international students. And you can reach out to these mentors for a variety of reasons: to gain advice on a topic, to ask for a resume critique. Really, the sky's the limit here. And what's really awesome about Cane to Cane is that they have sample email templates that you can use when messaging these alumni. So, and they're really helpful if you don't always know the words you want to utilize. So Cane to Cane's a big one. I highly recommend it. And then, like I said, LinkedIn is something you probably have heard about it, but I wanted to recommend it again because although there are alumni on LinkedIn, this is also a way for you to maintain connections from all aspects of your life. And I meet with a lot of healthcare students that say, really, is my major on LinkedIn? But if you go to LinkedIn, for example, and search for doctors or nurses or whatever, from the UM school alumni or just in general, trust me, you're gonna find many, many people in your field on here. So it is for everyone. It is not just for students in business. Healthcare and life sciences is highly represented by the users on LinkedIn. So who should you connect with if you are on there or not on there yet? It can be anyone. It can be, like I said, friends from high school, your high school teachers, your neighbors, your current college professors, any coworkers or supervisors that you have. I even think it's a great idea to reach out to people that maybe you've just met one time and you want to connect with them in the future, or just have the possibility of that. Like maybe your professor brought in an interesting guest speaker to class one day, and you can request them on LinkedIn and just say that you enjoyed their presentation and now you just want to add them to your network. So there's a lot of options there. When it comes to these platforms, the biggest suggestion I can give all of you to just make sure that you are maximizing this to the best of your ability is to never ask for a job outright. It's really important to make sure you don't do that, because networking is about a mutually beneficial relationship, and it's about making connections, and jobs can arise from it. But if you ask about a job outright, then sometimes it can make the person you are networking with feel like you're just using them for the job. And so what I recommend is that you use these conversations to ask for guidance and suggestions. And a good way to frame it is by asking something like this: how could I put myself in a position to work for this company or this industry in the future? And that's like a kind of a sneaky way to say, what should I do to get a job here or in this industry, without you saying, I really want to work for you, like, what do I do now? Or another good strategy is to ask the person you're networking with if there's any other people that they would recommend that you connect with, because then it just kind of keeps the chain going and you get to meet more interesting people that have the ability to help you. And from networking, you never know what's going to arise from it. Like I said, once you meet people, then they might just share opportunities with you that they hear of, and you never know what could happen. So we'll move along to the next slide. which is going to talk about continuing to hone your skills. So this is really important during this time, especially if you are finding yourself in an opportunity where you're having trouble achieving your initial plans you had, particularly for this summer. There are still many opportunities out there to develop and showcase your skills, to gain employment, and also to make money. These opportunities, like I said, may not have been what you initially expected, and many of them will be offered remotely. So we'll start with that, and I want to talk about remote jobs. Just one thing to keep in mind is that we're on the pulse of what's happening in the hiring world right now, as far as internships go and other opportunities. And many opportunities are not being canceled completely. Many companies are actually transforming, when possible, their opportunities to remote or virtual jobs that you can do online, at least for the time being. And so there are strategies for being able to find those opportunities to work remotely. One strategy we recommend is that when you're on job databases like Handshake or like LinkedIn, just using the keyword remote or virtual will help pull up all of those opportunities. And you can guess that if they say remote or virtual, that they're going to be continuing on throughout the summer. And then also, there's a lot of job boards that exist out there that are dedicated to remote work. And so when we share out this PowerPoint after this session, there will be a link to some of those resources you can use, but there's definitely many to choose from. The next thing is micro internships. Micro internships is probably something you haven't heard of before. It's kind of a newer idea, but when you think of a micro internship, you want to think of a short-term professional assignment that would take you in total probably 5 to 40 hours to complete. So what a micro internship is that a company will post a project for a student to apply to complete. They are most often paid. And so an example will be that company needs a student to do research on something for them and send them their recommendations, or they need you to edit their website, or they need you to analyze data, or whatever it might be. And there's micro internships in a variety of different fields. It's not always technical stuff. And so one website that we recommend for this, which can be found on hirecane.com and Handshake, is called Parker Dewey. And Parker Dewey is definitely a great platform to utilize and to look for those opportunities. Next is freelancing. So even though sometimes you may feel that you, maybe you're not about to graduate, maybe you're a first or second year student and you're like, oh, I don't have, what do I have to offer to employers? I'm not finished my degree yet. Well, you, over the course of your life, have definitely developed some sort of skill set. It may be related to your major, it may not be, but you can offer these skills to others. And you can offer it by freelancing, either for a fee or potentially you can offer your services for free. There are websites that exist like freelancer.com or Upwork that allow individuals to market their skill sets and set your own price that you would want to charge. So, sometimes people will charge to do marketing or graphic design or tutoring. The sky's the limit. It's really based upon the skills you've developed. And you could also market these talents on social media as well. Next is virtual volunteering. Especially for those of you who are thinking about going to graduate school, you'll know that many schools want to know what type of service you've done during your college career. And even though we can't be in person right now, there are many opportunities to volunteer virtually. And this goes along with freelancing too, because Perhaps you have a skill that you've developed that you can offer to people, and maybe during this time, because of what's going on, you decide you want to offer that skill for free to individuals. Also, there's many opportunities to help out in your community virtually. So the Butler Center for Service and Leadership has a website where you can look up different virtual volunteer opportunities. And then also, I can imagine many of your communities are also posting some opportunities of ways that you can help out in your communities too. And this is a great way to, again, not only serve your community, but to also continue building your skills, and another way to market yourself. And then lastly, online skill development. So I know that right now we're all busy with finishing up the semester and getting our classes done. But in the summer, you may find that you have some extra time available to you to gain skills that you may not have had time for during the normal year. So I recommend using resources like YouTube or LinkedIn Learning, which is a free resource that's available to all students to learn new skills. And LinkedIn Learning is really cool because they have business skills like leadership, they have technology skills, they have creative skills like Adobe, and you can take these classes to gain a skill, and that's just another thing you can add to your resume. There's obviously, this is a great time to learn languages, and also consider taking free classes through a MOOC, which you may have heard of before. It's a massive open online course. There's websites like edx.org or coursera.org where you can take free classes being hosted by many different universities. And I was just scanning this recently to see if there's any health and science classes on those websites. And there are tons being offered by universities across the world. There's even courses that are, it's really interesting, that are going on right now that are related to the current pandemic. And so that could be a really interesting thing to partake in to expand your knowledge and to continue learning. And then also, many of you may be thinking about certifications that you can be gaining, and some of those you have to be in person for, but if anyone was thinking about getting like a CPR or a basic life support certification, those can still be offered virtually. And so you can go onto the Red Cross website, for example, and still sign up for those if that was part of your plan. So now we're going to talk a little bit about Handshake. So Handshake is something that we talk a lot about at Topple because there's so many amazing things you can do on Handshake. And the first thing I want to talk about, which is a missed opportunity for many, is about the Handshake profile. So people that have completed Handshake profiles, and by the way, I didn't mention Handshake is our online career management system, but if people that have complete Handshake profiles are 80% more likely to be contacted by an employer than those who have not completed their profiles. So if you have not completed your profile yet, and we'll show you a sample profile in a moment, it's really important to do so. So here are some of the things that would go on your profile. One, like your resume or your CV actually. You would have your work experience, you would have your organizations and extracurriculars that you have partaken in, any skills or courses, and then a professional profile picture like LinkedIn. And then you have to make sure that your profile is public. That guarantees that the recruiters can see it. So if you keep it private, then they can't see it and they won't reach out to you. So I have a question that I actually just want to answer real quick, and it is about the free online courses that I just mentioned, the MOOCs. And so the question is, how do you view the value of free online course certificates for increasing your chances of getting jobs or internships? I think that's a good question. The answer depends. It depends on if what you're learning through the class is something that is desired in the role that you are applying to. So perhaps if you're learning a certain skill or area of knowledge that would be very helpful for you and the role you're thinking about applying to, then those would be very valuable. Sometimes they're just valuable for the sake of learning itself, but if it's something that the employer is looking for on the job description, then it can be highly valuable. Also, here's another thing about the value, which I think is really important. Right now, employers in graduate schools, one of the questions that they're likely to ask you, maybe not today, but once everything starts to go back to normal, they'll say, how did you spend this time? You know, what were the things that, you know, maybe if your internship was canceled or you had trouble finding the work that you were looking for, that will be a question that might come up. How did you use the time? And they're going to find a lot of value in the fact that you tried to continue your learning and growth during this time by taking classes, whether they're free or not, by learning a new skill, by volunteering, by doing all of these things. So there's value in that more generally, just by continuing to do different things and to grow. And yes, I hope that answers that question. So let's move on to the next slide about Handshake reviews. So Handshake reviews is a newer feature about Handshake, which you may have seen, but it's very helpful. It is the ability for students to review different opportunities that they've had, and you can look at these reviews and they'll help you explore careers and make better decisions because you have more information from your peers. They're helpful to get advice specific to companies and roles of interest for you. And then lastly, they're great because you can gain insight into a company culture, whether there was mentorship at that opportunity and learning, and those types of things are usually hard to gauge in a job description. So when you're looking for different opportunities on Handshake, if the opportunity or the company has been reviewed before, those reviews will pop up automatically. And they're really amazing. These reviews have the good, the bad, the ugly about opportunities, so you know what others liked about that opportunity and maybe what they wish was better. And because so many universities use Handshake, you're getting reviews from people at different universities across the country, and so you can learn a lot of different perspectives, and that can help you make a decision whether or not an opportunity is a good fit for you. So let's move on. So next is the Handshake Q&A feature, another relatively new feature that you have available to you. This allows you to ask questions or answer questions, and again, it's available to all schools, so there's many people that are participating in these conversations. And so if you have a specific question relevant to your major or to a company or to something specific to the field, you can post there and other people will respond to it, and those could be students or alumni. You can also set up email digests, and I know we all get so many emails, but as you can see, it only would lead to at most 6 emails over 4 months, and you can get them set up so that they're relevant to you, like relevant to only biology majors or to the healthcare industry or something like that. So if there's any interesting questions or discussions happening there, then you'll know about them rather than having to look at them. Okay, next slide. Handshake peer messaging is another cool feature I'll talk about really quickly. Like I said, many universities use Handshake, and Handshake peer messaging is a tool you have available to you where you can reach out to other students who use Handshake, and you may reach out to them for a variety of reasons. So for example, maybe you want to work at a specific hospital and you can search for that hospital in the peer messaging feature and see other students who've worked there before, and then you can reach out to them about their experience. You can reach out to students about experience with different schools, if maybe you're considering a particular school for graduate school, for resume and interview advice, if you saw that they worked at a company that you want to go to, or maybe you saw a review that they had, or maybe they answered a question in the Q&A feature and you want to get some more details about that, well, you can use the peer messaging feature to reach out to them. One question just came in about what are email digests. So think of an email digest as like a summary or like a newsletter. So what happens is everything that fits that topic is mailed to you on a weekly basis. You can actually even do this for jobs on Handshake, so that once a week, all postings that are new, that are relevant for biology students can get sent to you. And so just think of it as like a summary being sent to you of information using whatever keywords you've set up for it. Okay, let's move on to the last thing I want to talk about with Handshake, which is the jobs and internships feature. So with Handshake, there are thousands of opportunities that exist, and because it can be a lot, I recommend using filters when searching. You can search by industry, like healthcare, or life science and biotech is the name of the industry, and there's pharmaceuticals and some other things. You can also save your favorite jobs so that you can apply later. And then lastly, the applications will track your activity. So I'm going to actually show you all a few things on Handshake right now. So hold on one second. Let me pull this up. Okay, so all right, so I wanted to show you a few things on Handshake just so that you can see them for yourself. The first thing is what a completed profile looks like. So here's an example of a completed profile of one of my colleagues. She has a summary section that talks a little bit about some of her specialties and things that she has accomplished. You can see her work and volunteer experience section where she has some roles that she's done, and she's included some of the accomplishments she's had in those roles. You can see on the left, she has some skills that she feels very confident in. And then lastly, a few clubs that she's been a part of, as well as a course that she's taken. So here are some things that you can include on your profile. And as I mentioned previously, people that have completed profiles have the 80% more likely to get reached out to by a recruiter. The next thing that I want to show on Handshake is that jobs feature. And so here is where you can use filters to really target the search that you are doing. And I definitely recommend using this industry section here to search for things like healthcare or life science and see what opportunities exist. One of the things that I would also recommend during this time in particular, because things are so in flux, is to, right now the jobs are being posted by their relevance, but I would actually recommend right now using date posted as your, as the way that they're sorted, because these are the newest ones first, and so you can tell, okay, this was posted just today, it's brand new, so you know that it's not in flux, the company is still hiring, and you can count on it hopefully happening. The Q&A section I mentioned is right here on the top, and so you can search for, like I said, anything that you're thinking. So just putting in the word nursing, you'll see some questions and some answers that people have asked. And then lastly, the last thing I want to show you on Handshake is this peer messaging feature, which you can find under students. This has all students at all of the Handshake schools on it, so you can see it's a ton of people. And so maybe you want to only be looking at other biology students, and then maybe you only want to be looking at people that worked for Scribe America. And so here are all the people that have worked at Scribe America, and you can simply message them here and ask them about their experience with Scribe America. So okay, so if you want to pull up the PowerPoint again, you can go back to that. Okay, so I'm going to talk quickly about interview preparation. So like I said, companies are still hiring, interviews are happening, but now a lot of companies are, of course, doing phone and video interviews. So with that in mind, there are some resources that we have that could be very helpful, and those are Vault and Big Interview. Those are on the resources section on Handshake, by the way. Big Interview allows you to practice virtual interviewing, and you can choose by industry, and you can choose by, or like by topic, so you can answer questions specific to nurses, or you can answer questions specific to critical thinking, and you can actually record yourself, and you can even send the complete recordings to people to get feedback. You can always email those to topple@miami.edu, and we will critique those for you, but you can send them to your friends, your family, professors, whoever you want to get feedback on your answers. A great tool because a lot of us are going to be doing virtual interviews now. Vault is another resource that's available to you, which has good industry and job content for research purposes. And that is a very critical piece of the interview that helps you land the job by showing a company how much research you've done and how well you know what's happening. And we definitely recommend Vault for doing that. So let's move to the next slide. So now I'm going to talk about a few things specific to the industries of healthcare and life sciences right now. And the first is hiring trends. So as you know, most industries have been touched in some way by COVID-19, but healthcare and science expertise is still in demand, and you probably know that these industries are often some of the more recession-proof industries that are out there. Even though there have been a loss of jobs in these industries, of course, during this time, it's not as stark as in many of the others. So some of the areas that have the highest job growth right now are, of course, nursing and inpatient care. Also, companies that have a large online presence. So if you're thinking about any of the companies that do things with telemedicine or things of that nature. And then, of course, biotech and pharmaceuticals. And so you'll be finding opportunities in these areas, of course. Also, things that are on the front lines obviously have a high need right now, but that's of course a personal decision to make always if that's something that you want to do. But right now, many of the non-critical health needs are being postponed either by practitioners or by consumers. So some of those more critical health needs are the opportunities that are getting filled the fastest. Also, for those of you applying to graduate schools, I'm sure a lot of you are trying to stay up to date on what's happening with that. And from what I know, the plan is to continue to move along the process as usual because graduate programs are continuing. Although some of the clinical aspects may be impacted during this time, which may impact your decision whether or not you want to start right away or not. So that's definitely something to consider. because some schools are finding ways to postpone some of the clinical aspects until later and doing more of the content related stuff right now. Also, schools are being a little bit flexible as it relates to entrance requirements. And so some of you may be impacted by that, by the cancellation or rescheduling of entrance exams, by certain clinical experiences you thought were going to happen getting postponed. But one thing that I've heard across the board is that graduate programs are going to be very flexible as you start applying this summer about some of those things, because they're going to be really looking at your full academic history and not just what's happened over the last month. And some things may be waived or just may be flexible. I even heard yesterday that the SAT may not be utilized in college admissions next year. So these are the types of conversations that are happening. Schools are talking about being very flexible with these. And so if you are hoping to begin graduate school in the fall, that those experiences are going to continue. They just may be virtual to start. If we move on to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about the companies that are hiring now if you are looking for internships or full-time work. So when I demoed Handshake, I did a little bit of digging to see how many roles are on there right now in the industries of healthcare and biotech life sciences specifically. And I was able to find 1,000 roles currently in those areas. And so you can see a list here of some of the companies being represented. All of the companies that I listed, I chose big name ones that you may be familiar with, but all of the ones listed here are companies that posted on April 1st or afterwards. So these are companies that have posted positions since all this started that are still hiring and looking for students. And so again, this is just continued evidence that companies are still seeking healthcare and life science talent. If we move on to the next slide, I'll talk just very quickly about ways to stay connected in your different industries for up-to-date information. I recommend using different resources and professional associations to stay up to date with what people are talking about. I know that in my industry, in the field of career services, there are tons of conversations and webinars happening probably every day of the week that give me information about different things and trends that are going on. And that the same thing is true for all of you in the industries you're hoping to go into. And so I recommend looking at blogs. I just listed a few that are popular blogs in the healthcare space and science space that are also right now giving some really good insight and information about what's happening in the field. I also wanted to list a few hashtags that you can be searching on LinkedIn that will give you some really cool information. I tested out healthcare jobs and life science as some hashtags, and when I did that, it pulls up webinars, it pulls up job opportunities, it pulls up good articles right now, and all of this was very specific to the field. And so these are some good ways for you to continue staying up to date with different trends, opportunities, and so forth. So quickly on the last slide, or I have 2 more slides left, I'll try to get through them very quickly. This we're going to share out with you all. These are some helpful websites for you that have been popping up recently that talk about which companies are still hiring, which companies have frozen hiring, which internships are canceled, which internships are still going on. So these links are often being updated in real time. As soon as someone hears about them, people are going on to these sites and updating the info, and could be good information to just keep you up to date and know how to tailor your searches. And then lastly, the last slide, I want to talk for a moment about staying motivated. So that can be very difficult during this time, but it is important to, when it comes to your career, to, as best you can, continue to try to stay positive and motivated. And a couple of the points I want to highlight below, we'll talk a little bit more about this. So first of all, I think it's important to use this time as an opportunity to slow down and reflect. As I'm sure you can imagine, or you know from your experiences, when we're in college, everything is often so fast-paced. You go from your class to your club meeting, and you go do study, and then all of a sudden you have to declare your major, and then you have to pick your classes for next semester, and you don't always get a lot of time to just kind of slow down and reflect. And this time that we're experiencing right now, one of the silver linings is that it does allow us the chance to just really slow down and think about our career and reflect if we are on the path we desire, our career goals, and if we're going in the direction we want to. And it gives us time to dig up more information and talk to more people and do some research. And so I recommend using this time to do those things. This, I think, is one of the most important pieces. We are all in this together. I know a lot of you might be feeling like people could be getting a competitive advantage over you right now because you're not being able to do some amazing opportunity that you had planned. But you have to remember that not even just in the US, across the world, everyone's lives are being postponed. And so no one's getting that competitive edge over you. We're all facing the same issues, especially if you're graduating this May. You're in the same kind of space as every other college graduate right now. And so, you know, no one will be getting that competitive edge over you. Also, very important, what we're experiencing is temporary. This time will end, and even though you might read the news and they talk about the job market and how bad it is, it will improve. It's going to get better, and economists are already predicting that the second half of 2020 and then 2021, there's going to be much improvement, and the job opportunities are going to continue to grow. And then lastly, I like to end on this. Don't give up when you face setbacks. Many of us are going to experience some disappointments and setbacks and rejections during this time, but use these moments as opportunities to continue to learn and grow. And when it comes to a recession, and I can think back to the recession that happened in 2008, sometimes you may feel that you're never going to find anything, and it might make you decide to give up. But it's those people, the ones who stayed resilient and kept trying and had that positive mindset, that eventually found the opportunities that they were looking for. So don't give up. There are opportunities out there for you. Topple is here to help you and answer questions that you have. And yeah, we're here to help you. So now I will take any questions. I know we only have a minute, but please feel free to ask any questions you have in the chat box, and I'll start to take some of those now. Okay, so here's a great question that I think is important to answer. So one student asked about, sometimes they receive recruiter emails from Handshake that seem to be, not really relevant. So it might say, I saw your major in biochemistry, and I think you're a great fit for our company, but then the role isn't biochemistry and nutrition related. So here's what I'll say about that. A lot of companies that are on Handshake are looking for people in specific majors, but also a lot of companies like to bring in people with a variety of majors because it brings in interesting perspectives and knowledge to their fields, especially if those companies are doing things related to management or communication or product design and things like that. So sometimes you may get those things that are kind of random and you're like, how did they find me? But it's actually because they're looking for a diversity of knowledge and experiences. And so you may sometimes get those random things. But you know, maybe you haven't thought about applying to that opportunity before, but know that companies are looking for diverse talent. And so feel free to apply for things that maybe didn't fit your original plans, because companies are definitely very open to that. I was also asked the question, what is the name of the website that had free classes? So I'm gonna type this into the chat box. There is a couple of them. The first one is called Coursera. And then the second one is called edX. And those are the ones that have the MOOC that I was talking about that you can take for free. Some of them are you have to pay for, but there's a lot that are for free. Another question that I have is, so my biggest goal now is to complete my Handshake profile. I think it depends. There's a lot of different strategies on throughout this presentation. So your goals may be different depending on what place you are. Maybe some of you are finishing up your applications for graduate school. Maybe some of you are looking for internships. So I think all of these strategies are beneficial. It just depends. Maybe your biggest goal right now is to get a LinkedIn profile and to start networking, or maybe it is to update your resume. So I really do think it just depends on the place you're at right now in your career and what path you want to take next. Any other questions that anyone has? Okay, well, like I said, my name is Carly Smith, and you can feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'm actually gonna type in my email into the chat box. Feel free to save that. You can also find me on the Topple website. And if you have any questions about any of these resources that we talked about, or just want to chat about your career, please feel free to reach out anytime. Like I mentioned earlier, we'll share out this recording. We'll share out the PowerPoint with you all so that you have the information. And yeah, just feel free to reach out to me at any time. So thanks again for being here. Sorry, I wish you all luck with the end of your semester. And yeah, thanks again. Bye, everyone.